Why do we need to make them happy? Are they not happy? It's the happiest day of their life and they need me. What do they need me for? Are they not happy? Okay, friends, the story begins. We are continuing another passage, Secrets of the Talmud. And this is an idea in the Talmud that conveys the importance of dancing at weddings. Judaism highly regards the mitzvah or obligation of making the bride and groom joyous, making them happy. It's a big deal. It's a big deal in Judaism. Um, by the way, I contrast this to, let's say, a secular wedding, right? You go to a Jewish wedding and men and women are dancing separately. And if somebody's not familiar with that culture, it's like, what are you guys doing? Didn't know this community was like that, right? And if somebody's not culturally competent in what exactly is going on, they might not understand it. But the reason is, one of the reasons, besides halachic concerns, is that we're not there to have a good time. Although that would be nice as well. Nothing wrong with having a good time, but that's not why you're at the wedding. You're at the wedding for the bride and groom themselves to make them happy. You're there to dance with them. In fact, there's a story in the Talmud. It's not our passage of Talmud that we're discussing now, but it's a fascinating story in tractate Kesuvos, where it talks about the laws of marriage documents. And the Talmud says that there was a rabbi named Rabbi Shimon I believe Shimon ben Elazar, and he was at a wedding. He was like a prominent rabbi and prominent sage of his times in the times of the Talmud, and he's at this wedding and he's dancing and he's getting what seemed to be frivolous. It got to the point that he took 3 myrtle branches and he starts juggling them at the wedding. So picture this. It's not some young yeshiva student, some young kid. It's a picture a prestigious rabbi with a long black coat, and he walks in, and everybody, he has the whole persona, and he gets on the dance floor, and Rabbi Zera comes up to him and says, Rebbe, what are people going to say about us sages? What is the image you're painting for us? Why don't you consider the ramifications of what you're doing here? And he disregards him and he continues dancing. They were trying to stop him and he says, no, he keeps going. He was doing it intentionally. He had a reason. Later, when Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar had passed away, a pillar of fire came and illuminated his grave. And apparently I've never seen that before, right? The Talmud says apparently that's something that only happened once in every few generations to distinct people. And they're trying to figure out, what did Rabbi Shimon do that was so unique in his life that he merited this great divine revelation? Did he save a life? What did he do? They realized it's because of this dancing at the wedding and the language that the Talmud uses, ahanele shtusei, the sabah. It was because of what we call the shtus. Shtus means, literally translates as the foolishness of what this rabbi did. Because he was acting foolish, he merited a divine revelation. The Hasidic teaching takes it a step further. Foolishness means he was irrational about his relationship with God, about doing the right thing, which is good. You do it because it's true, because that connection is real, not just because, sometimes if we calculate too much, how should I be dancing at the wedding, and to what certain things can't be manufactured. And real joy shouldn't be manufactured. It should break all boundaries. So the Talmud, in our passage over here, talks about the importance of dancing at weddings. And as you'll soon see, this is related to the holiday coming up, to the holiday of Shavuos. If you go to 6b on the link, you'll find it much quicker with the picture that I had sent you. Rabbi Halbo, it says Helbo, it's Helbo. Rabbi Helbo said that Rav Huna said, anyone who benefits from the feast of a groom, but does not cause him to rejoice, violates the five voices mentioned in this verse. In the following biblical verse, we're going to quote, as it is stated, the voice of joy and the voice of gladness. This may sound familiar from the Sheva brachos, right? Kol sason v'kol simcha. Kol sason v'kol simcha. The voice of joy, the voice of gladness, the voice of the groom and the voice of the bride, the voice of those who say, give thanks to the Lord of hosts. There's five voices related to the bride and groom. And if one neglects to rejoice, to dance, they're neglecting those five voices. For the Lord is good, for his mercy lasts forever. We're just continuing the sentence. Even of those who bring a thanks offering to the house of the Lord, for I will restore the captivity of the land as it was in the beginning, says the Lord. This is from Jeremiah. These five voices in the context of a bride and groom correspond to the five voices mentioned in the context of the revelation at Sinai, as in Song of Songs. The day of the revelation at Sinai is alluded to by the phrase is wedding day, right? So this is connected to Mount Sinai, to the Sinaitic event, the revelation at Sinai, where also the Torah mentions five voices, right, of God, five distinct voices of God. And what is his reward? By the way, Mike, I think you'll appreciate this, and David. Why five voices? What's the significance of five? So I read one of the commentaries explain, this is just parenthetical. There are eight scales on the music, eight notes.
Octaves.
What do we call it?
8 notes in the octave.
Notes, yeah, eight notes on the music scale. Three of them, I don't know if this is musically true or not, but I assume it is. Three of them are used for speaking. Right? Your tonation when speaking doesn't vary that much. When you sing, there's a lot more fluctuation, right, in your tonation. So three notes generally, you're within a three-note range when it comes to speaking, right? Sometimes you'll speak medium, sometimes you'll speak a little bit higher, a little bit lower, a little bit of a combination. The other five are for singing, and specifically singing for God, and specifically singing to the bride and groom. And if somebody neglects that, they're neglecting those five notes, they're wasting those five notes that God gave them. So that's what some of the commentaries explain. Got to share that with your group.
By the way, just real quick,
Yeah.
you were saying, oh, it should be Rabbi Helbo and not Helbo. Like in the English text, there's a dot underneath the H. Instead of CH, they put the dot
Oh,
underneath the
interesting.
H.
That make it a harder?
That makes it the sound.
Yeah, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for
Yeah.
pointing that out. Interesting.
Sure. Sure.
Interesting. Okay, let's read a little bit further. And we're going to unpack this because we're going to discover something incredible. What is his reward if he causes the groom to rejoice? Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, he's privileged to acquire the Torah, which was given with five voices, as it is stated. And we're going to learn about this on Shavuot. We're going to read this. And it was on the third day, when it was the morning. There were sounds, kolot, right? And lightning, and thick cloud upon the mountain, and the voice of the shofar. The plural kolot indicates at least two sounds, while the voice of the shofar is one more. That's three. The passage continues, and when the voice of the shofar grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him by a voice. Along the three previous voices, the second shofar and the voice with which God answered Moses amount to a total of five voices at the revelation at Sinai. So the Talmud says, just as at Mount Sinai, which was like this wedding between God and the Jewish people, right? There were five voices. At a wedding, there are five voices, and we can access this if we bring joy to the bride and groom. Now, there is a lot that needs to be unpacked here. And what we're going to hopefully learn in the next, whatever it is, 20 minutes, I don't know, depending on how long this takes, right? What we're going to hopefully learn is a few things, a few questions that I'd like to just address. Number one, you don't have to memorize these questions. We're going to go through them and you will have total clarity. But I just want to give you a teaser over here. What's the connection between marriage and Torah? Right? You make a groom happy. It's like you're experiencing the five voices at Sinai. Because at Sinai, it was like a wedding. Well, what's the connection between a wedding and Mount Sinai? What's the reason that we need to bring joy to the bride and to the groom, right? And why is that? Why is joy so crucial here? Why is that the focus? How about give them education? Tell them how to be respectful. I don't know, premarital education. Bring them joy. I don't know. Just why joy? Right? And why is that connected to the Torah? And number three, to me, this is interesting. Why do we need to make them happy? Are they not happy? It's the happiest day of their life, and they need me. What do they need me for? Are they not happy? Um, Number four. What are these sounds that we're talking about? What are we referring to? I mean, historically, there was this sound at Sinai, but I'm tapping into this sound. What does this whole sound thing represent? What does it mean to me? What does it mean to my soul? Okay, these are the four things I'd like to unpack slowly tonight, because this is going to give us incredible insight in understanding joy, understanding relationships, understanding Judaism. Let's start from the top. The connection between the giving of the Torah and marriage. I mean, that was our marriage with God, right? We know this from King Solomon's entire book, entire treatment, Song of Songs, where he describes the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai as a marriage with the Jewish people. Here's an interesting thing. There's a commentary known as the Torah Tmima. Lived about, I'm going to say 150 years ago. And he said something interesting. You know what the connection between marriage to Torah is? Without Torah, you lack true morality. And your existence becomes very much about what I want, not about what I need to do, not about responsibility, but just about things. That's not to say that there aren't moral people who don't believe in Torah. But how do you know it's true north? How do you know it's true morality? How many people are protesting on campus now? No, have no idea what they're protesting. They think they're and they're essentially calling for the death of Jewish people in the name of morality. I mean, Hitler did the same thing. In the name of morality, we got to make sure the Aryan race prevails. So without Torah, you don't have morality, you don't have truth, you don't have a proper world. The only way to make sure we stay true north is to have an objective law system that is not a social construct, not a cultural construct, not a personal opinion construct, but a real true construct. Apparently, they did a study a couple of years ago. I thought this was amazing. Of people going into coffee shops and saying, I have $5 singles. Can I trade you for an actual $5 bill? To random people. But they actually hand them $6. To a certain number of people, they rudely interrupted them. The guy asking for the money switch rudely interrupted them with a phone call. Sorry, you're like abruptly and rudely. And apparently, there was a high percentage of people who were interrupted that kept the extra dollar. They felt justified. He wasted my time. He was rude to me. I'm going to keep his dollar. And the people that he was actively courteous to, oh, you forgot your dollar. People felt justified in keeping that dollar because they felt they were slighted. They created their own morality. And their own morality was it's okay to steal, even a dollar. But what if somebody felt slighted by that dollar, but revered God and said, well, God doesn't let me steal. Who cares if I feel slighted? Why is that relevant? Right? In order for the world to function properly, there has to be an objective truth. In order for human life to function properly, there has to be marriage. And this is what the Torah Timima says. In order for the world to exist physiologically, you need to have marriage. In order for the world to exist morally and spiritually, you need to have Torah. They are both means of propagating the existence of the world in a meaningful way. They're intrinsically connected. But let's take it a step further. Let's take it a step further. What is Torah? The Torah is a firm connection we have, a firm commitment to values. That's what marriage is. Right? With the Torah, I'm going to uphold values and morality and truth, divine morality, not just my feelings. And I need to incorporate that in a marriage in order for the world to continue. Now, the Talmud makes a point that this has to be done with joy. Right? That's a big deal. To the point that were somebody to show up to this wedding and not dance, not only did he lose an opportunity, but he's actually he's doing something wrong. It's like you're transgressing. You're transgressing the five voices. We'll unpack what that means soon. But you go to that wedding and you don't dance, you're lacking five voices. You're missing something. And if you do dance, you're gaining something incredible. And why is that important? Why do we need to bring joy to the bride and groom? Why do they need joy? Before we ask why we need to bring them the joy, why do they need joy? Why is that crucial? So here's an interesting thing. The Talmud says, a different passage in the Talmud says, you may be familiar with this statement. It says that creating marital matches for God is as difficult as splitting the sea. Have you heard that statement before? That's what the Talmud says. That finding a match, right? Needle in the haystack. It's as difficult for God as it is splitting the sea. And commentaries wonder, like, how could that be hard for God? How could anything be hard for God? One way that commentaries view it is that it's not the finding the match that's hard as much as it is sustaining the marriage that's hard. That's as difficult as splitting the sea. And the reason is because, this is interesting. Listen to this. The reason is because what happens when you split the sea? You take one entity and you turn it into two, a wall here and a wall there, and it's like two different seas. A marriage is taking two entities and trying to merge them, make them one. Two very different entities, two very different people who grew up in different homes, different backgrounds, different schools, different everything. And it's like the moment you exit the chuppah, you're expected to be one. And you are one. You might not feel one yet. You might not feel one all the time, but you are one. But to feel one, that is difficult. How are two people supposed to merge? How is it possible? And the answer is joy. Because the moment we have joy, the moment we have simcha, we kind of let go of things that don't matter. We overlook the things that don't matter, and you're able to connect. Happy people are able to connect with people much more easier than unhappy people. This is an incredible paradigm shift because we often think, well, if I connect to the right person, I'll be happy, right? And if only I had this, I'll be happy. And we often see happiness or simcha or joy as a result of experiences. And what we're saying here is if we intentionally employ joy, right? Don't look for joy, but use joy as a tool. It's actually going to help us better connect and find oneness. And this is very much connected with receiving the Torah at Mount Sinai. Because if we do it with joy, if we do it with simcha, if it's pleasurable and enjoyable, it's something we can not just do as a checklist, but something we can actually become one with. It's something we unite with. Goes back to the marriage analogy narrative of giving the Torah at Mount Sinai. It has to be with joy. Because God is saying at Mount Sinai on the holiday of Shavuot, I want to connect with you. I want to become one with you. The Torah will be that mechanism. The Torah is what I'm going to be handing you. Just as a groom hands the bride a ring and says, "You're going to be mine, we're going to be one." God is handing us the Torah and saying, "We're going to be one. We're going to unite." Commentaries point out, we actually learned this in chapter 46 of Tanya, that when we say a blessing prior to doing a mitzvah, what do we say? Asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav. God had kidshanu, sanctified us. The word kidshanu comes from the word kiddushin, to marry, to betroth. Right? As a husband gives the wife the ring and says, "I'm marrying you," God is giving us a mitzvah. We're grabbing it, and He's marrying us. But if we want to feel one and not just believe that we're one, we have to have simcha. We have to have joy. And we got to bring that joy to the bride and groom so we could help them become one. And on Shavuos, we have to have joy. So we, with God, can become one. Do you know there's a custom, a Chabad tradition? I don't think this is, I think this is a tradition exclusive to Chabad. And you may not have noticed this because I don't know if, I don't know how prominent it is, but it is cited in Chabad sources that after the reading of the Ten Commandments on Shavuos, which is an incredible experience and revelation, right? It's like hearing the shofar. It's a big deal. And there's a tradition to wish each other Mazel Tov. We just had the marriage. We just had the wedding with God. We just experienced this. We have to celebrate it. We have to have joy so we can actually feel the oneness. And if that's the case, that brings us to our next question. Shouldn't they be happy? What do they need us for? I mean, everything we preach about in marriage and intimacy in Judaism is that relationships are private, intimacy is private. We don't go around posting on social media our most intimate moments together. We celebrate, right? Even, and then all of a sudden it's like day one. Let's start this marriage on the right foot with everybody else trying to make us happy. Like, what do we need other people for? They should be happy inherently. What do they need people to be happy for? And they shouldn't I mean their happiness together should be very intimate, very real and very personal. It shouldn't be broadcasted. Why are we making such a big deal about making sure people come and take part in the simcha, take part in the joy? What do you say?
Well, it's actually it's a question, I guess, as well as a comment. But whenever I hear about like what the mitzvah is, it's like come and celebrate with, we're commanded to come and celebrate with the bride and groom. Now, if you just hear those words as they are, come celebrate with, one could say, well, they're already happy, and we're just there to celebrate with them in their happiness.
We're there to piggyback,
Okay, yeah.
right? So how does that help them then? They should be happy without us.
Well, but they are. We're just there to celebrate with them in their happiness.
So it's for us, you're saying.
Well,
So I
I
could
don't know.
buy
It's a
that.
question. It's a
No,
question.
no, no. I could. So theoretically, I like that. I could buy that. It's for us, right? There, we're trying to. We want the happiness to be contagious. However, the Talmud sees it as an obligation for us to show up there and be happy with them. It's not like this is in your best interest. It's like you got to do this. It sounds like it's more for them than it is for us.
Yeah.
Perhaps. I don't know. I'm just pushing back here, right? Just to. But here's what one of the commentaries pointed out. In the laws of Yom Tov, Maimonides, in his Compendium of Jewish Law, points out something fascinating. He talks about the mitzvah of Simcha on Yom Tov. On every single Yom Tov, on every single Chag, Passover, Shavuot, Sukkot, you also have a mitzvah to be happy. You have a mitzvah to have Simcha. It's a biblical commandment. It Like you have an obligation to eat matzah on Passover at the right time, the right amount, the right time frame, like everything, right? You have to sit in the sukkah on Sukkot. You have to shake the lulav and esrog. You have to hear the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. You have to have simcha on Yom Tov. Now, how that's defined? Here's what Maimonides says: anybody who is neglecting the poor, neglecting the widows, neglecting the lonely, neglecting the Levites, because the Levites didn't have a portion in the land, right? They're sustained by the public, by all the regular taxpayers. If you're neglecting these people and you're just focused on your joyous Yom Tov in your own home with your own food and you're neglecting them, Maimonides, the Rambam says that's not Simchat Yom Tov. That is not the joy of the holiday. That is what we call Simchat Keres. That's the joy of your stomach. That's what Maimonides says. If it's joy that's inward, exclusively inward, joy should be inward as well. But if it's exclusively inward, he says we're not going to call that the joy of God. That's going to be the joy of your stomach. The joy of God has to be outward, of sharing, of passing it on to others. So on the start of their new life together, of a couple's new life together, we want to make sure they're going to have real joy. And that real joy is not going to be exclusively inward. That joy is going to radiate outward. And it's going to illuminate to other people around, to the point that we're going to make it an obligation for other people to show up and experience that. And we have to have that joy on Shavuos as well, because Shavuos is the marriage between us and God. And we have to radiate that to every single Jew, outward. Right? Find another Jew who says, Shavuos, I don't know. I do Hanukkah, right? We have to find another Jew who's not, maybe doesn't know yet how beautiful Shavuos is, and share with him or her the beauty. Bring them to the 10 Commandments. Make them eat cheesecake too, right? It's important to radiate that joy outward, so it's not just an internal joy. And this brings us to our final question. The voices. If you experience the joy of a bride and groom, you experience the voices. You experience the voices that have been given at Mount Sinai. The 5 voices. What are these voices? Now, what are the significance of these voices? I want to just go back, refer to the text here for a second. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said that if you rejoice with the groom, you merit the Torah, which was given with 5 voices. What's a voice? You know what a voice is? So the Lubavitcher Rebbe has a very long talk, actually, on this little piece over here. And he says something so interesting. This is amazing. Voice is code word. I mean, the Torah speaks, and even the Talmud, not just the Bible, but the Talmud itself speaks in code language, right? It has these cryptic instructions, and we have to kind of unpack them through the commentaries. So what's a voice? Voice is code word for revelation. That's what a voice is. The voice of God? Well, wait a minute. God doesn't have a mouth. So we're speaking anthropomorphically, but God doesn't actually have a mouth. And the moment we take that too literally, it actually becomes idolatrous. It can't be literal. Voice is a mechanism of revelation. The way I reveal to you what is in the most inner depths of my heart, my mind, my values, my thoughts. How can I convey that with you? To you, right? I could write it down. I could share it with you. I can sign. Voice is a mechanism of revelation. And there's 5 voices. There's 5 types of revelations. There's 5 types of connections. There's 5 types of experiences. That's essentially what a revelation is, an experience. And there's 5 ways to experience God. Normally, we are operating on one or any combination of 4 of these experiences. So on a macrocosmic level, on a large scale, there's the 4 worlds that Kabbalah talks about. We've touched upon the 4 worlds in our Tanya studies, and a little bit of our Siddur studies as well. The world of starting from top down, Atzilus, Bria, Yitzira, Asiya. And when we say world, we don't mean a geographic location, but we mean perspective or plane or space. There's different spaces of clarity. right? A trigonometry professor and myself can be in the same physical space, but in different worlds, right? So you have different worlds, you have different levels of clarity of divine revelation. In the highest of worlds, in Atzilus, you have incredible clarity. You may not even have faith because you have no doubts. There's nothing to doubt. It's right there. In contrast, the other side of the spectrum, our world, the world of action, the world of Asiya, faith is something we have to develop, we have to nurture, we have to work on because there's so much lack of divine revelation. Just a minute amount, enough just to little teasers that we have to unpack as we are right now. But on a microcosmic level as well, you have your four levels, you have five levels of the soul, right? But there's four layers of the soul that we generally operate on, right? The nefesh, the ruach, neshama, the chaya. There is the most outer layer of the soul, which is our behavioral selves, how we act, which might mean a connection with God based on what I do, right? Or going back to the marriage narrative that we're talking about. Hopefully, I respect my spouse or my spouse respects me, but it's action based, right? I act respectfully, she acts respectfully. It's action. Then you go a little bit deeper, an emotional connection. How I feel. That's pretty deep. That's a big deal. An emotional connection. But again, emotions fluctuate, emotions change. Emotions can be less mature, more mature. Emotions can be shaped by, emotions don't happen in a vacuum. And what is the context for which emotions are developed? Our maturity, intellectual connection. That's even deeper, a third level of the soul. But then you have the drive, your will, your ratzon. That's pretty deep. You know the famous statement, nothing gets in the way of will. I want this to work. I want this connection, right? Nothing can get in the way of your drive. Unless you're like sleeping, then your drive is not active. But once you are driven, right, what gets in the way of that? But again, it still has its limitations. There is an even deeper connection. The fifth level of the soul that we have spoken about in the past, the yechidah, the essence of the soul. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, there's a code word for the yechidah in Kabbalistic and Hasidic teachings and manuscripts. Ta'anug, oneg, pleasure. Pleasure is the deepest part of you. And if your connection with God is just enjoyable because it's who I am, it's not just what drives me, it's not just my perspective. It's not just, I'm going through the different levels here. It's not just my passion, my emotional interest, and it's not just something I do behaviorally. It literally is who I am. Right? That's what a marriage is. A marriage is we are essentially connected, not because we love each other. We try to love each other because we're connected, because we're married. God said at Mount Sinai, I am the Lord your God. I'm yours. You're mine. We're essentially connected. Nothing's going to get in the way. That's the five voices. It's the fifth voice, the highest level of revelation where God says, I'm not just revealing to you my love for you. I'm revealing to you the fifth level, my innate essential connection with you. Yeah.
So maybe my recollection is wrong on this, but I what I thought you were going to say is not what you said. And I'm glad what you said is what you said. But I was thinking,
Sure.
oh, I know, right? I was thinking, oh, the fifth the fifth voice is the revelation from Hashem that we could not bear when he first revealed himself to us. And we passed away, right? We couldn't handle it, right? Now, is that the wrong term? Reveal at that point? Is that
No,
something?
that's okay. You're mentioning a very good point. There is truth to that, right? It's hard to operate on on a level. It's hard to operate with that relationship on a regular basis if it doesn't come from you. It came from God, right? It wasn't that. That's why the tablets ended up breaking. We ended up passing away, and Moses had to break the tablets because we ended up cheating. We couldn't handle it. We couldn't handle the truth, right? At some point, we need Shavuos, but at some point, we have to go back to real life and integrate it within ourselves and work our way up. But you do that through simcha. You do that through dancing. You do that through joy. That helps us integrate it. That helps us make that essential connection more sustainable. Okay, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.